And we do apologize for the gremlins that appear to have hacked into our system first thing this morning. And I'm also feeling a little bit like I've been attacked by gremlins myself. I think I've got a cold. There does seem to be something going around. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, my name is Jamie, and I have Brian on camera with me, and we'll be heading out on Jigger on our live safari. And if you are joining us for the first time, the fact that it is a live safari means that what you're seeing on your monitors is happening right here on Djuma and Arathusa game reserves in the Sabi Sands. And James is out bumbling around on Wendy, and he has VM on camera with him. I think he's headed down south. I think I just heard lions calling off to the west of me. But first I just want to check all along the western boundary of Djuma and see if we can follow up on young Madiba. Now, for those of you who might have missed the whole saga, young Madiba is a leopard cub. He's just over a year old now, and he unfortunately got hold of a stray dog who'd wandered in from outside of the Sabi Sands, and we're desperately trying to find him so that the Sabi Sands management can give him a sort of an anti-rabies shot, so a rabies vaccine. We just want to see if we can grab him and follow up with that. And all it is just a quick dart into the muscle of the bottom or the shoulder, and then he'll be good to go, and then he'll get one more in 21 days time. Now, I think without further ado, since we have spent quite a bit of time watching this spectacular sunrise, and it was a really beautiful sunrise this morning, I hope that some of you got to see it, I think that it's time for us to head out and see what we can see. Also here the impala. They're in high spirits this morning. A couple of rams playing around, and I'm going to try and sneak up towards them, see if we can catch some of their play fighting. Now, John, you also picked up on the lion audio on the Arathusa dam camera. Now, for those of you who aren't sure what that means, there are 24-hour cameras up with microphones at 2 dams in this area. One is at Arathusa, the other is at the Djuma waterhole, and it means that you can at any point in time have a look at what's happening down by the water. And John apparently heard lions calling off in the distance around Arathusa, and I will be heading across in that direction a little bit later. I do want to just focus on Madiba first and then head across and see which lions have moved that way. Now, last we heard, for those of you who might have missed the updates, the Birmingham boys are north in Buffelshoek, so I'm not too sure which lions are calling on that side. Be interesting to go and find out. Most of the impala have settled down and moved off. We've still got this young ram. And you'll notice there's been quite a colour change with the impala now as it starts to get warmer in the morning. Oh, I think I can hear lions again, but very far away. I'm just going to be quiet for a moment. Very, very far. They are around. I mentioned that it is warmer this morning. Yesterday morning was 8 degrees centigrade. It is now 12 degrees. And I don't know, to me, Brian, feels much, much warmer. It's really nice, actually. It's going to be, I think it's going to be blazing hot, despite my dire predictions. Yesterday, with all of that wind blowing, VM and I decided that it was going to be absolutely freezing this morning. but luckily it hasn't been. And I think the end result of that is that it's going to be much warmer today. Now, I'd love to describe to you what I'm smelling at the moment, but unfortunately I'm not smelling very much. I sneezed about 20 times just before we started up our sunrise safari, and as a consequence, I'm sure it smells beautiful and fresh and summery. So just imagine that. Imagine the fresh smell of grass and dirt and the start of some of the flowers, but that's about as far as I can tell you. Oh, and those impala are looking really beautiful in this morning light. But unfortunately we have a job to do and we're going to have to leave them. Well, not unfortunately, actually, it's quite exciting. Now, I said that I was going to go and look for young Madiba, and Lindsay, you were wondering if it has been confirmed whether or not that dog had rabies. So for those of you who might have missed it, once he was seen to have caught the stray dog, he was chased off the kill and the dog was taken to Ornisterpoort, which is a veterinary hospital as well as the sort of the veterinary school in Pretoria, and it was tested, but no, Lindsay, the results haven't come back. It's just that the Sabi Sands management have decided to take a preemptive approach to just looking after him, and it is just a better safe than sorry scenario, because the longer you leave it, the more difficult it becomes to actually inoculate against rabies. So they just want to get it done regardless of whether the dog has rabies or not. I would say it's unlikely. I don't think it looked like that dog had rabies, but you just never know. Sometimes they don't show symptoms, and we'll just have to wait and see. But for now, the Sabi Sands just want to dart him.
To hyena.
To hyena? Where? Oh, the impala have spotted them. Oh, yes. Oh, let's try and get to them. They are bolting though. Oh, hold on, let me stop there because maybe they changed direction. Well spotted, Brian. The impala don't seem to appreciate it. Let's try and stay with them. There they go. There's one. Tricky? Sure. I wonder what's happening there. We'll try and keep up with them and see which ones they are. It was very interesting. I wonder what they've been up to. Actually, coming this way. Whatever they were doing, they definitely weren't hunting. So you could see that by the reactions of the impalas. They didn't seem terribly bothered. They moved away. They didn't come sprinting, there was no alarm calling. Along the western edge of quarantine, and they're actually giving us a really good demonstration of what makes hyenas so amazing. They can carry on like that for hours. It is almost a completely tireless stride. They're probably going, let's say, somewhere in the region of just under 20 kilometers, maybe 20 kilometers an hour at the moment. They can obviously up that by about double if they need to. This is just their relaxed canter. But they've already managed to leave me in their dust, so to speak. I wonder what this is about. out and where they're off to. They're heading in the direction of the old hyena den, but I doubt it's to do, or that they're going to head that way. Fast. Off onto a game path. I know this game path, they use it a lot. I've followed them along here before. They really are, they're moving so fast. Good job, Brian. Now this is really interesting, and this is one of the reasons why, although we know the leopards and the lions on the Sabi Sands so well, we actually don't know much about the hyenas that are around us all the time. And that's because they cover distances like this. You don't really find hyenas sleeping or lying down unless you're at a den site. Oh my word, I think we're going to lose them. Well, I'm certainly more awake now than I was earlier. Cutting straight through the block towards Philip. Cut line. I'm really trying to stay with them just so that we can get an idea as to where they're off to. Oh, down Philemon's Dip. Now we've seen how fast we've been driving through the bush, and they're so far ahead of us. And as I said, they can maintain this speed for a long, long time. Far longer probably than Jigger could keep going. Here we go, we're right at the entrance to the old hyena den. I'm going to stop here just so we can have a look at how fast they're moving. Isn't this interesting? Slowing down slightly. I wonder if that's where they're on their way to. Okay, let's catch up with them in case we lose them. Now Linda, welcome to the Sunrise Safari. You were wondering if we were near any hyena den, and yes we are. We're actually right where, when I first started working here in July, where the old active hyena den was. It then moved across to Gallagher's shortcut to the north of us, and I would not be surprised, because they have moved once again. There's a possibility that they've moved back to this den site here. So I'm going to slow down slightly. I don't want to go rushing into an active den. Now unfortunately, if they don't stop here, it's going to be a bit more tricky to stay with them, and it doesn't look like they're going to. There's also no evidence of hyena at the den. It's not fresh. Stop here. Now, although I would love to follow them and see where they're going to go, I cannot go crashing through the bush after them, not in this thick block. First of all, we wouldn't be able to keep up with them, but we'd also actually probably scare them with all of the crashing and the bagging. So they were fine with our presence behind them in that open area, but if we started scraping through the monkey orange, which is essentially a thicket in front of me, we are going to scare them off, I think. But that was really interesting. I wonder where they're off to. Well, that was a really, really exciting way and a very unexpected way to start the morning. So well done, Brian, for spotting those spotted hyenas dashing across the screen. And yes, thank you, Charlie. I managed to miss all of the aardvark holes this time around. I seem to have learned my lesson, but you never know. Now, after our exhilarating hyena chase through the bush, I believe that James is out and about and ready to update you as to what he's been doing. So we'll head across to him, and I will catch up with you a little bit later.
3, 2, 1. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Wendy here in the magnificent sunrise of Africa that is now warming my face. It has been a stunning, stunning start to the morning. Obviously, the radio communications, as you can see from my little radio, are not what they should be. So should your questions, because you are on a live safari, not be answered correctly, or answered or asked in a timeous fashion, that is because of our communications. So hashtag Safari Live if you want to ask us questions at wildearth.tv if you want to get hold of us. Very nice to hear from you always. So please do not be afraid, especially if you're perhaps a new viewer and you're a little scared of being pilloried for some sort of what you might perceive to be a stupid question. Please don't fear. There are no stupid questions. There are plenty of stupid answers, many of which I've given myself, but there are no stupid questions. So please fire them through to us at will, and I will do my best to answer them. And if I can't answer them, I'm sure somebody clever on the Twitterverse will be able to. My name is James Hendry. Behind me today I have Viam on camera. He has returned from leave. Obviously he was there yesterday afternoon, not with me. It's very nice to have him back on board. He seems not to have brought a picnic with him today. Did you bring a picnic today? Oh, one banana. Shame. He's going to be absolutely ravenous come 9 o'clock this morning. And it's been an excellent start with Jamie and some hyenas earlier today. So our plan, we're not too far actually from where Jamie was. We're going to head towards the south and then the east, see if we can pick up on some lion tracks. I'd really like to see a lion. It's been some time since I saw one. The Birmingham males at the moment are feeding on a buffalo carcass, yes, that was killed I think 2 days ago on Buffelshoek, and fascinating stuff. I'm not sure if Jamie told you or not. Last night and yesterday afternoon they were interacting with what seems to be one of the Nkuhuma lionesses. Now, it was really interesting to see. We saw some video of it yesterday evening from one of the landowners at Buffelshoek, and what she was doing is going up towards the lions and rolling around and almost flirting with them in the way that they do before they mate. And the males were not interested. They would watch her come and then they would chase her, and watch her come and then they would chase her. Not wholeheartedly, they'd let her go, but she'd run away and then they'd leave her, and then she'd come back again and roll around in front of them and display, and they would then eventually chase her off again. And what it looked to me like was that she was trying to placate them. She was trying desperately to get into their good books, and that seems to be the way these things happen. So she is trying to avoid any further conflict with the Birmingham males, and obviously there has been a huge amount of conflict. They've killed 3 of the lionesses from that pride since I've been here, so a bit distressing in that way. But that's what we think's going on. I don't know where the rest of the pride is, we don't know where Junior is, we don't know where the young lioness is. So it's all rather interesting. So I think without further ado, it's going to be a hot one today. We're going to head off towards the east of the property and see if we can't find some other lion tracks coming in. Did you see that hat change, Viam? It was a very skilled hat change that avoided my boiled spot being obvious. Now there's nothing, no lion tracks coming onto the reserve at the moment, but as always it's a beautiful fresh morning when nobody's been driving around, which means that we have the tracks to ourselves, which is a wonderful way to be. Now that sound that you can hear is the Game Drive radio, and that I'm afraid is going to be in live communication with us today, so I'm sorry about that. It may disturb the peace slightly, but it is very important to our task. On we go without further ado. I think it's going to be very warm today. I woke up this morning without the normal chill of the dawn, certainly nothing like it was yesterday. And Liam was just saying already the light is kind of overexposed, and that kind of white haziness of this time of the year is filling up the sky. Then of course update on young Madiba, and we went looking for him yesterday. We found his tracks heading very close towards the northern side of the Sabi Sands, towards one of the gates, very close to, not too far from where our camp is, about 2.5 kilometers to the north of that. And there was no further sign of him, so we're not really sure where he is. Obviously he was on a main access road, so the tracks disappear very quickly. We are going to continue to look for him over the course of the next few days, just so that we can keep track on the progress of his rather tumultuous life. There is an impala there. So Mary in Michigan, as we look at that impala where there's lots of dust, beautiful dust there, you want to know, I mentioned the other day that there was a second mating season for impala, and you want to know if that's why the males would be fighting. You just look over at that one there, who's now turned his face from us because he's nasty. Look at his face there, Marianne. I think the dust in the air here and that slight injury to his face, I don't know if you can see it, just under his eye he's got some marking. I think that's from a fight. Marianne, I think that's exactly what's going on. The reason they're fighting is because of this secondary breeding season. It's a very, it's not as nearly as distinct. Can you see that injury there, Marianne? It's not nearly as distinct as the May breeding. Look at the beautiful colors. Gee, that's lovely. Not nearly as distinct as the May breeding, but it does happen round about now, and I think that's exactly why you'll see one or two of the males fighting. Stunning, Viam. Very artistic. In a lovely way, that new grass, that precious new grass, is shining in the light of this marvelous dawn. Trying to get a question through. I was just athletically getting out of the way there. A question about the black thing. I'm going to get the question again. Hang on a second. Oh, there we go. Okay. So a question about the black gland on the fetlock joint. Now the fetlock joint is the joint that is on the, I'm just going to sneak forward while I answer this question. The fetlock joint is the one, it basically looks like an ankle. It's not the equivalent of the ankle, but it looks like an ankle. It's actually the equivalent of, I think, the metatarsal joint, metacarpal joint. I think that would be the correct anatomical way of describing it. But if you look just about the back ankle, for want of a better term, that's called a fetlock, and that fetlock joint has got a gland in it, surrounded by that tuft of black hair, and the gland is used for scent marking. They spray pheromones out of that gland when they're running away from animals, and that's often why you see impala kicking their back legs out while they run. And what that does is allow them to follow each other as they charge away from various predators, because of course they are the #1 thing to eat out here if you happen to be in the top 5 predators. That's because they're ideal size. They're not too big and not too small. They're still a good meal for a lion. They're perfectly within the size limit for a cheetah and a leopard. And of course hyena and wild dog definitely find impala a very tasty morsel indeed. And we were chatting a little bit about mating with Marianne now, and the new lambs will be dropped in November, and when that happens it will just be a feast day, a feast month out here. All the predators will absolutely devour all of those little babies, which is a bit sad for the babies, but very nice for the predators. And for about, what is it, it's about 50% of those babies won't make it through their first year, which is a bit sad, but the predators really do relish the time. And I think that there is, you will read that leopard are not seasonal breeders, but certainly here we've seen so much mating in the last little while, which would indicate that there will be new cubs come December time, which is when all the young impala are around. I suspect that there may well be some kind of timing involved with the estrus periods that we've seen recently with the leopards around here. All right, I think let's carry on. It's a very peaceful, marvelous morning. Anna-Marie, you have very correctly surmised or picked up that despite the fact that we have had that new rain and it has been most appreciated, it's now almost 2 weeks, no it's not, it's about a week and a half ago, 10 days ago that we had that rain, and all the dust stopped and everything became crispy and clear, and you say you can now start to see dust starting to build again. Anna-Marie, you're absolutely right. It will start to get dusty, and you know, if we don't get further rains, which is, well, I mean, those rains that we had were pretty early and pretty unlikely. If we don't have further rains, then what's going to happen is that it will become very dry and dusty again. Just pulled off the road to get out of the way of another game drive vehicle. There we go. It's from Arathusa. We'll now get back onto the road, Liam. I'm just desperately sorry to have disappointed you, Maggie, in Australia, that I didn't give the fashion report on what VM was wearing today. I will do that for you now, VM. This little dressed in sort of a bush chic, I suppose you would say, with a heavy pair of boots on and a hat older than Methuselah on the top of his head. VM, where did that hat come from?
Got it, previous work.
Previous work.
Yeah.
Okay, now, it's a really scruffy thing, but it does look like it's very well used and very appropriate for his work as one of the world's finest cameramen.
Very comfy.
Very comfy. Good. X-Ranger, you're absolutely correct that when I lose my handheld radio, I will need something to point with. It's very convenient having this, and I mean, like I said yesterday, it's good for beating cameramen if they misbehave or eat too much on drive. No, I promise I won't hit you, don't worry. Well, I might.
Cameramen can't feel pain.
Okay. Cameramen apparently can't feel pain, so that's good. But X-Ranger, I will be most pleased to have proper communications back rather than this pointy thing, although it is quite fun to poke at things. Makes me feel authoritative. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? Good. Any luck this morning? Okay, good. Thanks. Bye-bye. Enjoy your drive. That was a fellow from Nkoro Lodge. His name, for the life of me, I cannot remember. It's not because he is a forgettable person, it's because I am forgetful. I have met him once before, racking my brains now. Now, Nkoro Lodge is one of the game lodges that is around here, obviously, otherwise he wouldn't be here. And it's just further to the east. It's the most easterly lodge before you hit the Great Kruger National Park. And just in case you were wondering, when I say that we hit the boundary of the Kruger National Park, there is no fence between us and the Kruger, so we are part of what's known as the Greater Kruger National Park. And the Kruger National Park itself is also not fenced out of the Gonarezhou Reserve in Zimbabwe and the Limpopo, I think it's called the Limpopo National Park in Mozambique. Together they make up the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, and that is 8 million acres of, well, I mean, almost pristine wildlife land, shall we say. The reason I say it's perhaps not as pristine as it might be is because people have been around this area for a long time. Now, that's not a bad thing. So I'm not saying that it's a bad thing that it's not what we might call pristine wilderness, because I believe that people are part of the wilderness, and the rich human history of this area certainly adds immeasurably to the character and the enjoyment that I get out of it. The distressing thing, of course, about the Nkoro driver coming this way is that he's come all the way from the east, and therefore there are probably no lion tracks coming onto the reserve from the east. Well, certainly from the south. So an excellent query here from Mars in Tucson, Arizona. Mars, you would like to know why it is that those males would be refusing the female, given the fact that their sole purpose of taking over a territory seemingly is so that they can increase their chances of mating and therefore propagate their genes and so fulfill their evolutionary role in the world. Well, Mars, I think it's because they are still in a state of great adrenaline hype, because they're still taking over this territory, and I think their age combined with that has a large degree of, I think that's why they've been killing some of the lionesses, and so they don't really know how to react to this young, or she's not that young, to this lioness who is making advances to them. And you know, this is the first time they would have experienced something like this, a female who's perhaps coming into what we call a false estrus. So I doubt she's coming into a full estrus cycle. I don't think she's going to ovulate. But she will try and cement a bond by mating with them. And some of their behavior has just been very anomalous, Mars. You know, they've killed lionesses. That's not apparently that unusual, but it's not necessarily explicable from an evolutionary point of view. There are some buffalo just up ahead here. We're going to drive off road and have a look at them. When one is not looking at lions, one needs to look at buffalo. So Mars, I hope that answers your question. I find it quite unsatisfactory as an answer, but I quite find the explanation of why the Birmingham boys have behaved like they have slightly unsatisfactory. So I'm still thinking about it, still researching it, and still trying to find out exactly what the story is. What a large herd of bachelors here, a monastery of celibate bulls. Terry in Santa Ana, while we look at these fairly magnificent buffalo bulls here, you want to know, would there be fighting amongst the Birmingham boys over mating rights? Now, this is a common question, and it's an extremely valid one, of course. Terry, there's no strict dominance hierarchy within a coalition of male lions. But that is not to say that one doesn't occur sometimes. So normally what will happen is that whoever, just listening to the radio quickly, so Terry, normally what happens is that whoever starts to mate first in a coalition will continue to mate until the estrus cycle is complete. That's normally what happens. They don't fight over mating opportunities. That said, there is a hierarchy based purely on size and possibly also on testosterone levels. So what I would suspect, and I don't know this for sure because I haven't been here for a very long time, is that the mating that has taken place with the Matimba males, for example, where one is very clearly bigger than the other, and he's also got a much darker mane, indicating a higher level of testosterone and therefore possibly aggression and dominance. And what that does mean, Terry, is that I think he's done more mating than the other one. So Hairy Belly of the Matimbas has probably mated more than Ginger has. I don't think that Ginger has excluded himself from any kind of mating, but you'll probably find that there is a sort of semi-dominance about the mating. But I don't think that they definitely don't fight over mating opportunities, which is quite interesting. And there doesn't seem to be cases of multi-paternity, as far as we know, where different cubs in a litter have different fathers, because what tends to happen is that a lioness will mate with a male, and until that estrus cycle is finished, she won't mate with another one. Unlike the leopards, which tend to mate with a few males during an estrus cycle. Now you can hear all of the red-billed oxpeckers calling frantically. And if you're walking in the bush, that is a sound that you listen to very carefully, because obviously it does indicate the presence of something like a buffalo, indicates the presence of a rhino, or not an elephant, because of course the elephants don't tolerate oxpeckers. We're not really sure why, but it could also indicate an impala or something like that. But absolutely you need to be very careful when you hear that sound and you're on foot. A lovely little this, I think you're on that buffalo there with the big boss on his head. Anyway, the buffalo here, you can see the difference in their horns, and you can see the one there has got a big helmet on top of his head. That helmet from which the horns grow is called a boss, and the boss is a great skull protector. It's a skull cap, and it takes the brunt of any fighting that occurs between the bulls, and they do fight quite a lot when they're in the herd. The aggression displayed over mating opportunities is well, I mean, it's quite terrifying at times. And then compare it now with this old bull here, who looks to be almost on his last legs. You can see his boss has been worn away from years of fighting and scratching his head on the base, or often of cabretum trees, which gives them that sort of red colour on the top of the bust. Look at him, he's a wizened old boy, isn't he?
He's got a big injury on his back.
And he's got a nasty injury, yes. Yeah. Well spotted them. Now look at the oxpeckers. Anybody who thinks an oxpecker is purely helpful towards an animal, that their relationship is symbiotic entirely, there you can see it is clearly not. That oxpecker will purposely keep that wound open so that he can eat out the blood from the wound. They eat ticks not because they like ticks, they eat ticks because they like the blood that the ticks have sucked out of the buffalo. Hello, old fella. I bet he's got some great stories to tell. Look at his undercarriage there. The oxpeckers are also having a go at his undercarriage, which, if he takes a step forward, unfortunately it's hidden a bit by the only stick in sight. I'm just going to push the clutch in and see if we don't. No, we're not going to move. But his testicles are quite badly injured. Let's see if he moves his foot. Ooh. Wonderful. This is a stunning sighting. Well done. I'm just going to move very slightly back because it's actually quite interesting to see the injury there. There you go. You can see that. Can you see that oxpecker is now feeding on an injury on the scrotum, which see that his scrotum is almost atrophied, and that's a function of his age. That's not uncommon at all. I know he is not in particularly good shape. You can see some of his bones sticking out from a tough dry season. But you know, as kind of enfeebled as he looks, he will be a formidable opponent to a pride of lions that came through here. And of course, he would also have the defensive help of this group of monks with him. Beautiful. Now, that one walking across picture is just clearly in a better state. He's got much more muscle mass on him. And they all seem to be getting up now. Seems to be a general movement to the south. Oh, they look like they smelt something to the north. Their noses are up. This is quite interesting. Oh, there. It's a little group of warthogs. Just see them. I'll get my head out of the way. And they're just through there. You see them, Jim?
A little bit.
A little bit. They're just walking through there, and I'm sure they gave these buffalo a little bit of a fright. Oh, we can't see them. They're just a little sounder of warthogs walking down east, possibly towards the twin dams. I suspect that's what they're doing. Okay. So they're just getting up to have a bit of a move around the place. They'll probably head towards the south there. There's some mud down at Twin Dams. We're not too far from there. And there's also some water not too far across the southern boundary here. And a question about oxpeckers, which we were watching, and you can see them, they do keep wounds open. They do keep wounds open. They do enjoy, well, what can I say? They do enjoy bits and pieces of sort of exposed flesh. That's what they like. And Anna Marie, you want to know, are they the only birds that will eat blood in South Africa? Well, no, of course not. The raptors all eat a lot of blood. They all eat a lot of meat. So the birds of prey eat a lot of meat. Lots of birds will eat carrion if they can. So something like a grey-headed bushshrike, for example, will not, while it may not go and sit at a carcass, will definitely sample bits and pieces of dead stuff if they can find it. But they're definitely the only birds that will sit on an animal and keep the wound open. They're the only birds that are tolerated on the backs of animals, except perhaps the odd heron, who I've seen standing on hippos' backs in the water, but otherwise they're the only birds that have evolved the strategy of moving with animals. And I mean, there is an element of symbiosis to the relationship. They do definitely clean off ticks, and I think that makes a big difference to disease control. The caveat, of course, or the payment that the animals have to pay is that if there is an injury, these oxpeckers will keep it open. They probably also do clean it out a bit, but I do think they keep it open. And fascinating birds, and fascinating kind of relationship that has developed between them. You can hear them calling. There's a lilac-breasted roller just behind us. He's just gone flying into the tree there. And they're all shouting and screaming at each other now as the spring approaches, trying to attract females, having territorial disputes. I wonder if they don't have a nest in this tree. There we go. And then the question, of course, is begged as to what caused that injury to the buffalo. Rena, you wanted to know that, and I don't know what it was. I don't think it was a lion. No. A lion injury on an animal tends to be something in the way of a claw scrape. An animal that escapes from the attentions of a lion will normally have kind of deep claw marks down the back. They're running away, a lion will jump on the back and stick the claws into the back end, and if it gets kicked off, there will normally be some ripping. Now that injury on the buffalo, of course, is in the sort of shoulder region, just behind the shoulder, and I don't know what would have made that. It could well have just been some kind of an ectoparasite that managed to get through the skin like a tick bite or a whole host of ticks. Maybe a thorn that have initially opened it up, but I don't think it was a lion. May even have been another buffalo, you know, if they were having a bit of a fight and he got hooked there. It's quite possible that it was another buffalo. Right, we're going to drive off along here, gently towards Twin Dams, and see if we can't get another view of them. Otherwise, we'll carry on. Also on the topic of the oxpeckers and healing and whether they're making the problem worse or making it better, Virginia and Kentucky, you would like to know, is it possible that they could contribute to an earlier death, the oxpeckers, by keeping the injury open? Virginia, I think they do have a certain function for cleaning, and I don't think that they would. I think that they do keep the infection down, probably, in those injured pieces. There's a nasty noise coming from Wendy. Anyway, if VM catches fire, that's because there's a noise in the back of the car. What's interesting, Virginia, is that I think what they do is probably keep the wounds free of bacteria, but they don't necessarily let them heal. So I don't think that they cause further infection, and certainly there's no evidence to suggest that they would ever make a wound bigger to the extent that it really is a problem. There's an old boy walking past us. Marvellous. All right, I think we should leave these fellows. They are, of course, VM's favourite animal, aren't they, VM?
Lovely.
We'll pop across to Jamie. She's got some tracks to show you, and we'll head on and see what else we can find, and see you just a little bit later.
Welcome back. And although we still haven't picked up on Madiba's tracks, I do have a track that I want to pose to you as a trick quiz. It's a very, very difficult one, so I'll be incredibly impressed if you get it right. although I have lots of faith in our viewers. I know that lots of you have been watching for a long time. Let's see if we can catch you out with this one. I'm going to have a look there. I'm going to hop out and just show you exactly what it is, just because it is so indistinct in the sand. Let me grab a stick quickly. So the track we're looking at is this one here, and this is a really tricky one. I'll tell you what you're looking at. It's very indistinct. 1 foot here, 1 foot here, 1 foot here, and 1 foot here. And if you get this, I will be very impressed. I will tell you that back foot, front feet. And if you can picture what it is that moves like that, then you'll get it straight away. And the distance between tracks, probably about this far. So from the front of the last track to the back of the first track here, that's the distance that the animal is covering. Let's see if you guys can guess what it is. It'll be very interesting to see. Now I'm still checking around for young Madiba. I'm very curious to see what he's been up to. And James tells me that yesterday he had his tracks all the way up north towards Gowrie Gate. And my tactic this morning has been to go all the way south along the sort of western boundary of Djuma and check in that direction. And the reason I'm doing that is because these are areas that are familiar to him. The question, of course, that we have to ask ourselves is, where is Shadow, and has she come to collect him and take him to a kill? And if that's so, where have those two disappeared off to? Anyway, for that mystery track, which I will be very impressed if you get, you can send those answers through to #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv. Let's see if we haven't caught you out on this one. Now, Brian and myself, after we lost those hyena disappearing south into the block, we did try to follow up. We looped all the way around to see if maybe they'd popped out of Treehouse Dam for a drink. Just really curious as to what goes through their heads. And as I said before, we know so little about hyenas in comparison to the way that we know the individual lions and the individual leopards. And that sighting was a perfect example of why that is. It is so difficult to really stay with hyenas as they move through, unless you happen to find them sleeping in the bush, which doesn't happen often. Or, of course, the best way is to go across to a den site. And unfortunately, the den site that was on Gallagher Shortcut has moved, and we've yet to relocate it. It's going to require quite a bit of time on foot. And Monica, you were wondering why it is that hyenas move their den sites the way that they do. And there's a couple of reasons. The largest one is that if you get a group of animals like that, in terms of hygiene, I'm trying to put this delicately, but let's just say that they're not the cleanest of creatures. They also bring bits of the kill back, especially with older cubs, as those dens do have. So a chance for those cubs to start supplementing their diet with solid food. You can imagine the parasite, the fly buildup, the maggot buildup. It just gets to the point where it is no longer sanitary living conditions for them, and it's time to move. It also becomes very pungent, I'm not joking about that, which of course increases their chance of other predators like lions attracting their attention, which they don't want to do. They want to stay under the radar. And that's the main reason. But then things can happen, sort of once-off events, maybe an elephant herd comes through and pushes over trees over their access path, or one of the tunnels collapses, or there's a pride of lions just very close to the den and they just decide, you know what, it's safer to move. And they'll reuse den sites over and over, and they'll have a sort of set system of rotation, but you never know exactly which den they're going to go to. Now apparently when the den was moved, luckily one of the guides actually saw the mother moving the youngest cub, so the tiny little cub, and Aubrey saw him moving west from that den site. So somewhere around Aubrey's Road or Sandy Patch, there's a good chance that the den is there. Once again, the view has never failed to surprise me. So, Marianne, Rava, Raggedy Ann, you all got it right. That track quiz of mine, it was indeed a hare. It was a scrub hare. And that was a really tricky one, so well done, because I didn't expect that. I well, at least expected you to have to think about it for a little bit longer. But very, very good. And what typically is a giveaway with hare tracks is the biggest giveaway is actually the shape of the track. So although you can never really see the distinct footprints too well, they actually make an L shape. So the front feet pack together in the front, so the ones that we saw, and then the side track, so it makes an L, if I can describe it like that. I cannot think, that's how I was taught, but that is the animal that we were looking at. It's a bit shady, but that is the scrub hare. And a great way, it's important to know that track, and I'll tell you why. We're not going to go following scrub hares and trying to track them down wherever they're sleeping, although that in itself might be an interesting exercise. But it's really, really important in terms of aging other tracks that you see. So if you've got lion tracks along a road, and then you've got scrub hare tracks over them, then you know that your lion tracks are not from early in the morning, they must have been from sometime in the night, because scrub hares are nocturnal. So that's why, although we're not necessarily focusing on tracking the animals per se, it's why we need to know what they are, because we need to know their habits and the times that they are active in order to age tracks. So that is why that question was important. It's not to do with necessarily following the animal all the time. There are a couple of birds calling. There is the work harder sound of the Cape turtle dove. There's a magpie shrike calling, and then that trill that you were hearing, the brrrr, that is a crested barbet. Cool thing I learned about crested barbets, just while I'm thinking about it, that trill that they make, the brrrr, they've got a split in their larynx. So what they can do, where it splits, I'm just trying to look for him. Oh, there he is. Got him there. Maybe shift around so that Brian can show him to you. Stop there. Listen to him go. And that's the trilling noise that you were hearing. See if he calls again, and then I'll finish my explanation. Now, this is not the best looking crested barbet I've ever seen. He's a bit scruffy, a little bit dirty. Might be puffed up because it's cold, although I don't think so. It's not terribly chilly. But to finish this random piece of information that I read up on the other day and then completely forgot to share with the viewers, they have a split in their larynx. So what they can do is they can blow air out and produce that trill whilst still breathing in. Similar to the technique that, say, the didgeridoo players utilize, that sort of, what's it called, circular breathing. They can circular breathe, so they can sustain that trill for much more extended periods of time. So it's not just a lung full of air producing that sound. Here's the second one. Looks to me in slightly better shape. Now it is breeding season for them, and a tree like this knobthorn, this dead knobthorn that they're in, could make for a perfect nesting site if there's a nice hole somewhere in the area. And in a similar way to woodpeckers, they can actually excavate their own holes. So they'll start where there's a bit of a basis for it, and they'll peck their way and bore their way until they have a nice nest site. And this is more than likely a mated pair. Very nice. Definitely worth stopping and seeing what's out there and just listening to the sounds around us. Beautiful birds. It's always fascinating to me. There's two directions that bird colors go in, and it's essentially completely split. They are either completely cryptic and sort of brownish in color and camouflaged and hide away in the grass, or they take these vibrant splashes of color, whether it's the barbets, the crested, or the black-collared barbets, and the kingfishers or the rollers. They've all approached it as a reproductive strategy to be really, really brightly colored. And nobody can fully explain to me, and I don't fully know why, you get that split in adaptations, but it is fascinating to think about. Off he goes. Now, I'm sure that they know where the leopard is. Unfortunately, I cannot interpret barbet trills, but we never know. He's probably somewhere around Triple M. That's his comfort zone. It's where he knows. And especially if Mom hasn't been around, then that is where he's going to hang out. But if Mom is around Simbambili, then she might have come back to collect him to cross Triple M. And I think that's our plan. Let's go and check out what's happening there. I also want to see if I can get an update from the guides at Arathusa as to which lions we're calling this morning. And of course, for those of you who were watching yesterday's sunrise and sunset safari, in terms of just chatting about leopard updates, I want to hear if Kwetile has finally, my word, that was a surprise. Just stop for a moment. That's, I think, the first time I've ever seen a big group of male kudu out in the open like that. I know that it's right into the sun, but I don't want to startle them. And we've actually got the most spectacular bulls. Now, Brian, I don't know if you're with Andrew in terms of naming the kudu Zeus, but I believe that one of them is Zeus. He's got very, very wide set horns. He's tucked behind the guari bush now. What I'm going to do, because these boys are so spectacularly beautiful, and it's nice to see a group of male kudu like this out in the open, you don't always get to see them. I'm going to just shift around, see if we can get the light on the other side of them. Good. Oh, look at that. How beautiful is that with the new fresh green grass? And to think that just over 2 weeks ago, there was no green at all. It was completely brown and dusty. And obviously for these kudu, these brand new shoots are just too good an opportunity to miss out on. Oh, beautiful. And these are really, at least the bull in the front that we're looking at to the left, sort of the left of your screen, that is a very, very mature kudu bull. Okay, I think let's try and loop them and see if we can get the sun on the other side so we can really get a look at them in detail and have a look at their horns. Sure. There is so much beauty around here, and it's around every corner. And that's the wonderful thing about these live safaris, is that you never know what you're going to find. From a crested barbet to there's about 5 male kudu, and 3 of them are very mature. They've reached those sort of 3 twists in the horns. I'm going to take quite a wide berth just so that we don't spook them in any way, although they are very relaxed. But I'm going to just loop around the other side. Stop here so that we don't spook them. The 2 young males are actually play fighting, practicing the skills that they need to one day compete for females. I'm going to be quiet for a moment. Oh, I was going to let you listen to the sounds of their horns. They've decided to stop. Now, play fights like these are completely relaxed. There's no danger to the individuals. But for the older kudus, when they do start competing for mating opportunities, they can actually get stuck together, and I've heard of lots and lots of cases where they've been linked together by those spiral horns and they actually can't get out of it. And there have been lots of recorded cases of kudu dying in this way. And what I want to do now, since they have moved into thicker bush, is to just try and get a view of Zeus. Because I have a theory that his wide set horns are probably a massive advantage, or possibly a disadvantage. In terms of getting stuck, he probably wouldn't. But he also then leaves himself vulnerable to attack in the middle of his head, or to damage to the middle of his head. He's just coming through. Let's get him in a nice position so we can see him. Zeus is unique to me because I've never seen a kudu with such wide set horns. He's going to cross the road. He's got a spectacular set of horns. They're really, really long, but they're almost, I don't know, they're almost stretched out in a strange way, and that's just a genetic fluke. Got to just stop here for the moment, because if I spook the one in front of us, the rest of them will spook as well. You can see him looking off intently, and I'm going to show you why in a moment. I haven't spotted a predator. They just spotted a wildebeest who moved in. Still want to get you that nice view of Zeus, for those of you who haven't seen him before. I think he's going to carry on into the block. There we go, that's him, isn't it? Yes. Go. That is the very dignified Zeus with his massive set of horns, just with those ivory tips at the top. But they start to go a little bit pale with age. Now, those massive horns, Jennifer, you were wondering whether or not it's true that the kudu horns never stop growing, and that is absolutely correct. They will continue to grow throughout their lives. It will, obviously the fastest time of growth is in their first 4 years as the horns develop, and then it slowly decreases in growing speed, but they will continue to grow throughout their lives, just like elephant tusks. And that is bone. So just imagine how heavy those horns must be, and that's why those males have that thick, powerfully set neck, because there's probably, I'm just thinking about it, it's probably 6 or 7 kilograms on their, in terms of their whole skull and the weight of those horns, and they're long. So you can imagine the strength that's needed to even just dip your head down with all of that weight. Solid bone with a keratin sheath around it. Really are quite incredible when you think of them like that. And I have heard, although it's not confirmed, it's a theory that I've heard about, that male kudus, if they do die a natural death, it is because they are struggling to actually maintain the weight of their horns as they start to reach their old age. So really, really interesting. I want to just loop backwards. Now that our kudu have moved off into the gori bushes, let's see if we can get that wildebeest as well. He seems to have settled down. Where's he gone? Is he still here? Oh, there he goes. This is one lone male wildebeest, and I think he's actually out and about patrolling his territory. Unlike the kudu, he's feeling just a little bit shy. Oh, he stopped there. Oh, awesome. Now that, what he just did there, is not... Let's just have a look at it. Because he looks very young. In fact, that's interesting. I was going to say that it was a male. I actually think it might be a female. That's more unusual. Or it could be a very young male who has not fully developed yet. Let's see if we can get a bit of a closer look. Because that movement that the wildebeest was doing, where it was digging, it's not actually digging, it's scent marking. They have glands between their hooves, between the two halves of their hoof, on their front feet and their back feet. They can use them to scent mark by scraping. And typically in wildebeest tracks, interestingly enough, you can tell male from female tracks just purely from that scraping action. I think this might just be a young male. It must be. It would be very, very unusual to have a female moving through an area and scraping around. But feeling very camera shy this morning, this wildebeest. Now I think our wildebeest friend is going to continue moving away from us. So I'll stop here and give you one last view as he walks away. very, very nice to see. But apparently, James has something exciting to show you. He has some ellies for you. I think we're going to head across to him. I will continue my search for young Madiba and be back with you a little bit later.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy. Behind me is an elephant and a whole herd of them sitting down, grazing through this drainage line area here where the vegetation is green and verdant and delicious. Well, not really just yet. It is turning that way after the wonderful rains we had last week. Looks like a fairly spread out herd. Probably the same one. Brent had a big one around here 2 days ago, and I think that's the same lot. And I mean, they really are extensively spread out. Liam, can you perhaps give a wide-ranging view of them all dotted about the place there? I can see one at least sort of 300 meters away, well, 200 meters away, across the dip. Can you see that?
Yeah, very far.
Too far?
No.
Okay. And they're very relaxed, which is wonderful, just enjoying what is turning into quite a warm morning. There you can see them moving, little grey or large grey shapes, should I say, through the vegetation. Very comfortable to be split up and spread out amongst this area. Now, let's see what this chap in front of us, not that one, is eating. I suspect that what he's eating are little pieces of Xerophyta retinervis, or the baboon's tail. I'm just going to retrieve my powerful binoculars. Now he's eating strychnos. Look at that, isn't that wonderful? We've seen a lot of the strychnos eating in the last few days. And you can see how crucial an elephant is to the health of an area like this, because they do a little bit of bush clearing and they maintain the area in a state of, well, relative clearing, I suppose. I think she's also eating those little, you can see the green shoots all over the place. Yeah, she is selecting for them, eating those, what they call baboon's tails or Xerophyta retinervis, one of the first flushes of green that we get after the rain. She's also ignoring a couple of wild flowers that there are just below the trunk. It's a very, very peaceful sighting here. Oh, what a crossy. Can you hear that? A wonderful sound of a bearded woodpecker doing their territorial call. Wonderful to hear. So lovely, it echoes down the drainage line. Look at this now, wonderfully confiding elephant, eating the new leaves of the baboon's tail. This is fantastic. She's gonna get so close we're gonna run out of space here. Wonderful. Now some of those baboon's tails, of course, are sorry about that everyone. Some of the baboon's tails are flowering. They're the first flowers of the season. I mean, you can see how close he or she is. I think this is a young bull, no more than 1 meter away from the car. This is so special. Hi. Had a bit of a smell and didn't like what he smelled. That's very typical young bull behavior. Comes up to investigate, then shows his size by opening his ears out, and then when we don't react by running away in terror, he walks away in slight shame. That was really spectacular. Gee whiz. So these will be the young bulls on the fringes of the herd. They're the ones who are just trying to assert a little bit of independence from their parents or from their mothers and aunts and sisters. I'm going to sneak a little bit forward into this clearing then. Let's just see if we can't get a slightly better view of them coming through the drainage line here. I don't want to make a big noise, that's all. So they've been so generous with their relaxation around us. Lovely. Sue in San Francisco, you've obviously been really impressed by the way these elephants are using their trunks to pull out individual leaves from these baboon's tail plants, and it is really impressive. And as you correctly ask, does it take some time for them to learn to use their trunks? Absolutely it does, Sue. You know, there are over 100,000 different muscle and nerve fibers in a trunk like that, and they are not easy to learn to use. So an elephant is born with a trunk that is almost useless. And by the time they wean, at around 2 years, they're able to use the trunk pretty dexterously. Now, I think it takes another year or so before it's quite as functional as the one in front of us is. It's just scratching his bottom there on the tree. That is so cool. So Sue, one of the interesting things is that when a calf is born, the trunk is almost useless. You know, it's just flops about the place, and it's shorter than it is on an adult proportionately, and that's so that they don't stand on it. They've got so little control over it that they walk all over it and damage it quite badly if it was any longer. And so, because of the lack of control, it's slightly shorter. It doesn't touch the ground when they're born, when they're little calves. I'm just going to roll slightly forward. Obviously, we cannot follow them through here. And like I say, fully functional probably at about 2 years, and then 100% useful at about 4. I would say it's probably. But they're certainly using it to feed themselves by the time they're 2. Now, we're not going to be able to get too much of a better view than this. They are feeding all the way along the banks of this fairly large drainage line. And it always amazes me, you know, they're feeding along the banks of a drainage line here that you and I would consider quite difficult to get up and down. But these elephants are astonishingly agile for their size and for their apparently clumsy way of moving. They really do move up and down these drainage lines with incredible dexterity. I'm sorry, we can't get a slightly better view of that one. It looks like he's about to go down into the drainage line. I'll try and roll a little bit forward here. Much rolling when you're off-road here. As far as we can go, I'm afraid. I've lodged us on a stump. And we were just watching this bull who's now sort of not very confidingly hiding behind this Ziziphus mucronata tree or buffalo thorn. And Nora, you want to know if any other elephant has ever reached a trunk into a car that I've been sitting in. Nora, I've had one or two bulls touch the car very briefly, but nothing reaching into the car. I try and avoid getting into a situation where that can be possible. Sometimes it's difficult to avoid, but ideally we try and avoid that sort of thing. So the only reason I would ever let an elephant get that close, unless I was stuck and it happened to be charging me, which I hope it wouldn't happen. The only reason I'd let an elephant get that close was if it decided that it wanted to come that close to us. So if we were watching, say, a breeding herd and a young bull like this detached himself and came over to investigate in a non-aggressive fashion, then I would stop and wait and let them come past. But as soon as an elephant starts to behave in a manner that indicates that they're threatened, the best thing is to just extract slightly. And so it's not, while it is quite common for elephants to come very close to us here because they trust the cars, for them to reach into the actual vehicle is something unusual. Just do a little run through here. I'm afraid the view is not excellent from where we are. This is a very interesting question as we're looking at young bulls here, two young bulls, neither of whom are anything close to full size yet. And John, you'd like to know at what age they achieve full size. John, they never achieve full size. An elephant grows until the day it dies, which is quite interesting. Obviously they slow down growing quite a lot, but they do keep growing until they die. And very old elephants obviously don't grow very much, and they probably lose quite a lot of mass because their muscles will perhaps start to atrophy. But a big bull probably reaches his top mass at about 45 years, 45 to 50 years. Nice question, John. Thank you for that. I often forget that rather fascinating fact of elephant life. Now, you can see these elephants eating, you can hear them eating, and if you spend any time with elephants, you notice that they just do eating, basically. That's what they do all the time, to try and keep their bodies moving, to try and maintain the energy balance required for such a vast mass. And Rachel, you'd like to know how much they eat in pounds. Rachel, it does depend on the elephant, of course. A big bull will probably eat up to 250 kilograms of food a day, so that's obviously an enormous amount of food. They've done tests on, I think the major tests were done on a 10-year-old cow a while back, and she, I think, ate about 150 kilograms of food a day and produced in excess of 75 kilograms of dung a day, so that was quite something. So their dung is obviously a huge thing, but I think a big bull, 6-ton bull, would eat about 250 kilos. So if you multiply that by 2.2, we get to about 600 pounds of food a day for an adult bull elephant. So that is a huge, huge amount of food for a big animal. And if you can imagine the effect that they have on the ecology of an area, all of them knocking about, eating that amount of food. And they eat all sorts of things, Rachel. You know, they don't only eat green material. So you've asked if it's all green. Definitely not. And in the summertime, at least in the wintertime, there's very little green for them to eat. And they spend a long time digging up roots, like we saw that one doing just now. Digging up the roots and breaking bark and eating dry seed pods on the ground. And then when there are fruits, they will eat a lot of fruit. And if there is green vegetation, obviously they will select for that. That elephant now is eating something called a jackalberry tree, and he's eating the new flushed leaves. There's just a lovely, lovely atmosphere around here of complete peace as they feed along this drainage line. And they're all over the place, you know. You can't get this impression from the camera, but they're all over. There's some about 200 meters away. I just saw a baby running after its mother through some thick bush away to the side. But everything is very calm and collected, and there seems to be no stress around here. And you do generally get a feeling from a herd of elephants as to the amount of stress that there might be, or whether they're relaxed. And I think this bunch of elephants is in a state of very joyful repose as they eat their breakfast, which will in turn run concurrently into lunch and tea and then supper without so much as a break.
That's how it should be.
Well, Viam, for you, yes, I know. Viam, of course, for those of you who don't know, is an extremely hungry man all the time. I think he's probably got a tapeworm. It's a wonderful day. The birds are calling, singing away. Elephants are feeding in peace. The woodpeckers are pecking at the trees. And Viam is going to eat his banana shortly.
Looking at it.
You're looking at it. All right, I think we're going to probably move away from them because we can't really see them anymore, and they've disappeared down into this very fastly greening drainage line. So let's move gently along. We're quite close to Biffle's Hook waterhole, so we'll go and see what's happening there. And I'd also like to try and show you, I know Brent showed you one the other day, but I'll try and show you again one of these flowers, the Xerophyta retinervus flowers, beautiful lily-like flower that comes out of these baboons' tails that the elephant was so readily devouring. Right, Wumpy, on we go. Right, sorry about all the noise, everybody, but this is strychnos vegetation. Monkey orange trees like this one to our left-hand side. It does tend to scrape and make a nasty noise. You can see how it is designed. And old Eugene, who lives in the tin shack below the Gari repeater, had a bit of an issue last week, or 2 weeks ago. He was cut by one of these trees as he was helping Jamie get out of, or friends or somebody getting out. They were stuck and he was helping them get out. And he was cut by one of these trees, which, the seeds are supposed to contain strychnine and the fruit, but he had a very nasty effect or reaction on his arm. And it actually started to rot some of the flesh away on his arm. And so I think they probably do carry a little bit of strychnine in some of the spines as a defense. Clearly that elephant felt no ill effects as a result of the strychnine. Eugene's arm certainly did. Okay, we're out. I will try and find you a beautiful Xerophyta retinervis flower. Excuse me, frog in a throat. Oh, giant tree crab, there we go. Right, there is the flower, everybody. Beautiful, beautiful flower. I will now point at it with my pointing stick. Lovely purple lily-like flower, which I'm definitely not going to pick. And I just want to check if it smells of anything. I'm going to say no, and I'll tell you why. Try not to spike myself to death as I go down to smell. It does smell. Oh, that's lovely. It's very subtle lily-like smell. That is really actually quite spectacular. It's got a very sweet sort of sweet subtle smell. It's not very very overt, but the reason I said that I didn't think it would smell was because of the fact that it's blue, and that blue color generally attracts insects through ultraviolet, and so they don't necessarily have the smell that would attract birds to them for the purposes of pollination. Now, Siberia Zumi, you want to know what it tastes like. Siberia Zumi, I am not convinced that the Xerophyta retinervis is necessarily fit for human consumption, and so, well, at the risk of creating something of a spectacle of myself, if I drop dead, it's been real. Taste of nothing on earth. Do you want to try some of them?
No, but do you require medical assistance?
I do not require medical assistance just yet, thank you.
How about now?
I will be fine. Right, while I see if the effects of this Xerophyta retinervis on me are hallucinogenic or perhaps affect my bowels, we're going to head across to Jamie and see what she's managed to find, and I'm going to head to Buffelshoek, and I will see you just a little bit later.
Welcome back, and now we have a mystery on our hands. Now, I'm pretty sure that I've picked up on Shadow's tracks. It's entirely supposition, and I'm just going off the fact that she's come straight out of Simbambili, where she was last seen, and into Voya's in the direction of where Madiba's last tracks were. Now, I haven't seen any tracks of his. I went all the way up Voyatilla main access towards Gowrie Gate, picked up on her tracks there, and I've come back down Triple M just to check and see if she hasn't crossed with him somewhere here. But these are fresh tracks, the ones that we've got, and they come straight from here, which is Simbambili, across into Voyatilla. Now, I tracked her further along where the tracks met main access, and she went straight north. There's a lot of alarm calls happening in that area, but all sound like they might be north of our boundary. And I've just done a U-turn now on Triple M, and I'm going to head back in that direction, because Although it is guesswork, I'm fairly certain that this is Shadow. Could of course be Karula or one of the other leopards that lives around here, but it's just my suspicion. Gut instinct tells me it's Shadow. Now these are very fresh because this is Triple M, which is one of the main access routes on the reserve. And the tracks I had on Boyatella main access were also very fresh. So those, I could tell you now, go through the block in that sort of direction. They pop out just over there on Boyatella main access and they go across and they continue straight north into a drainage line. Now, of course it is supposition, but my guess would be she's killed something over there and she's going to go and fetch Madiba, or she's just going to go and check up on him. She has been away for a few days, which means we've got to act fairly quickly, but luckily, if that is the case, it means that they're going to be on the move, which in turn means that we're going to get alarm calls in response to their presence. There was a squirrel shouting earlier, but I think he was just shouting for the sake of shouting, or maybe at a snake, quite possibly. Couldn't see what he was alarm calling at. But this is where it becomes really fun. It's a test of guesswork and reading the signs and the clues and trying to figure out from there how it's all going to fit together as the pieces of the puzzle. Now let me just think this through. She's crossed here, she's going into a drainage line. Where is young Madiba hiding and why have they come so far north? It's perfect though, because the Sabi Sands management are living at Gowrie Gate, or the guys that will have to administer the anti-rabies dart. So if we do find them, they're nice and close. I think the best way for us to unravel this mystery is for me to hop out and carry on walking in that drainage line and see if we can pick up on any alarm calls or anything that might give away the position of this mystery leopard who I believe to be Shadow. In the meantime, Scott is also out and about on foot, and I believe that he would like to catch up with you and update you as to what he's been doing. So let's head across to him and I will catch up with you a little bit later.
What a wonderful angle this is, everyone. I'm sure one that a lot of you would have never seen before. And we are here at the Buffels Hook waterhole. And this is the resident hippo, possibly Bob, but we can't be certain if it is the same hippo that did spend some time here a few weeks and months ago. Now, we've come here, we're going to have to be very cautious of him because we don't want to disturb him too much. But the reason why we've come down to the water's edge is because we are following the tracks of lion. In all likelihood, the remaining members of the Inkuhuma pride. I'm sure James or Jamie would have updated you that the one lioness is still hanging around the 5 Birminghams, but it looks like Junior and at least one other lioness, we're guessing it's the 2 of them, came from the east, or sorry, from the west in this direction towards us. And there's some really great signs of where the lion actually took a drink. And if you come and take a closer look here, this is where I think Junior came and had a drink. And you can actually see this massive paw mark over here where he would have had to get as close as he could to this water to drink up. And isn't it wonderful to see these tracks? We always like to show you tracks, but it can be difficult from the vehicle. The lioness came this way, and she's decided to have a drink in a slightly different area, and you can see where her tracks, my shadow's getting in the way, we just need to make sure the hippo doesn't get too worked up. They can be very dangerous, but we do have the vehicle parked right behind us, so don't worry. But there is also another track of a lioness over here having a drink. We've also got a glimpse of James in the other vehicle who's parked behind us, and he's come into this area to hopefully help us find exactly where these lions have gone to. Now, while we are on foot, we do need to be careful, and I want to, rather than distressing this hippo, get back as soon as we can to the vehicle and then back onto the tracks. We're not sure exactly where the lion have headed to from here, so we're going to have to comb the area, do a perimeter search around the dam, and hopefully we'll be able to understand exactly where they are. So the plan is to continue searching, and hopefully we will find the rest of the pride shortly. We are going to send you back to somebody. I've got no comms with FC. I've lost my communication with them, so I'm not sure exactly who you're going to go back to. Possibly James on the other side of the dam, or Jamie, who's also hot on the trail of some leopard tracks. So exciting prospects. There's still some time left to find more animals, and I'm feeling confident. We'll see you later.
Hello everybody, welcome back to marvellous Wendy here. Well, she's semi-marvellous I suppose, but there in the distance you can see the picture of the bush walk, and I think it's quite a nice thing for you to be able to see exactly how they do it. You can see Gendre on the right hand side there is trussed up with a fairly heavy backpack. Obviously in the foreground is the sight of Bob, the bachelor of Biffleshoek, and Scott Dyson, of course, is going to help Gendre now. There we go, he's now presenting to you in the manner of a silent movie. On the back of the vehicle we have a professor from the University of Cape Town watching on in well, bemused fascination, I would say, is the expression on his face at the moment. He is writing an article on us. Gendre is not only going to be filming, he's also apparently going to be tracking with that great big backpack on his back. So that's how they do it. It's really quite a, I think it's a magnificent way of experiencing the live safari. So that's a kind of a almost behind the scenes-ish, in front of the scenes-ish shot of what goes on with the bushwalk. This hippopotamus, if it's the same one, and I think it probably is, has been coming to and fro from this dam for the last few months, and I think he's a young bull, as are all of these independent chaps that you see on their own, young bulls who are not quite big enough yet to take over territories. And this is pretty good territory now, though, with the rains coming and the special grazing land that is starting to sprout all around a waterhole like this. This becomes much more prime territory, and so he may not be alone for too long. We have seen him at one stage. He seemed to have found a friend. We don't know if it was a female friend or a male friend, but he or she then disappeared after a little while, and I think because the grazing around here was pretty poor. But now after the rains we can definitely see some sprouting of grass. There we go, just coming into picture now, on top of your picture. An interesting question from Diana in northwest England about hippo birth, and of course this hippopotamus is unlikely to give birth, given that he's a male. I mean, we never can really tell, of course, but one of the things that we can tell in biology with a definite certainty is that male mammals don't give birth. Well, I don't think they do. And Diana, you want to know if they give birth in the wet season or the dry season. And if in the dry season, how do they do it? How do they protect the babies? They're not particularly seasonal breeders, Diana. They will have a peak, though, during the time when conditions are the most favorable. And that will be when the rains have come, when there's lots of grass for them to eat, when there's space for in the water. They don't want to be giving birth in water that is filled with hippos. And I mean, when it gets really dry in some of the rivers, the pods of hippos just kind of fill every available space of water. So they will generally give birth in the wet season, and they give birth in the water, and the babies then come and breathe out, and they can walk pretty much immediately, and they do suckle quite a lot under the water and then come and stand on their mother's backs, and that's generally how they do it. So normally, Diana, it will be during the wet season. Yeah. You can just hear behind us the lovely sound. I've obviously stopped now. There, the white-bellied sunbird. I don't think we can see him. Oh, there he is. He's just on the other. If you go the other way, you turn the other way to the back there. Sorry. There he is. Beautiful white-bellied male sunbird, now flying away, gone away. Sorry about that. He was sitting exactly where Liam's pointing the camera, and they are fascinated by all the little flowers that are starting to come out. That's why they're singing with such exuberance and joy at the nectar that they are now retrieving from all the flowers, especially in some of the combretum trees around the dam. Right, onward, see what other little spring wonders the bush has to offer us. It's a loud one. A nice question about primates from Christy Berry. Now, Christy, we don't know that we've heard from you before, so if this is your first time, thank you for taking the time out to ask us a question. We do appreciate it greatly. And you want to know about monkeys and why we don't seem to see a great deal of them. Christy, they are around, and I suspect that we will see more and more of them as the fruit in the trees starts to come. But it's not... Djuma doesn't have necessarily a poor population of monkeys. We do see them. They come to the camp very often, and certainly as the fruit, like I say, starts to come out on trees like the jackalberries, we'll see them more in the fields. But they are around the place. They doesn't have a particularly high population, but they're definitely around, and I don't think they're in any sort of danger from a species point of view. And then you want to know, are they going to reintroduce the Simango monkey to this area? Christy, the Simango monkey has never occurred in the forested areas. They like to live in forests. They don't like this sort of woodland, dry savanna and woodland area. So the Simango monkeys occur just off towards the Drakensberg Mountains in the forests there, in Natal, and into the coastal, thicker coastal vegetation that occurs down the east coast of KwaZulu-Natal. That's where the Simangos come. And those are the only two monkey species that we have here. Then there, of course, is the Chakma baboon. Now, I'm very interested by the fact that we don't see lots of baboons here, Christy. I don't know why that is. Certainly at Londolozi, just down the way. Sorry? Liam was making a joke that I missed. The baboons certainly occur in great profusion at Londolozi or Singita and Malamara along the river. So I suspect that's got to do quite a lot with the river. I'm not sure why we don't see more of them here, but I suspect it's just not optimum habitat for them in this particular area. And we had another question earlier on while we were looking at the elephants, and I didn't get to it, about animal reintroductions, and do I know of any successful animal reintroductions and rehabilitations, certainly in this area or any other area. And you know, they are very few and far between successful stories of wild animals that have been injured or raised by human beings and then successfully reintroduced into the wild around here. Certainly the cats tend to have the worst time of it. I've seen films made about reintroductions where the endings have to be made up because the cats almost inevitably are killed by territorial wildcats. So that's a bit of a problem. And then in terms of something like an elephant, I suppose you could probably reintroduce an elephant, you know, because the herds are that much more accepting and they'd probably take in an elephant. But a lot of the other animals tend to either get killed by their own kind because they don't understand how to react, or they don't know how to react with predators, and it really is a very difficult thing to try and reintroduce animals. That said, there are success stories. Rhino, for example, very wonderful success stories of reintroductions into Botswana by a truly remarkable company called WildEarth. And you hear of various other organizations who say, well, we've dropped 1 or 2 rhino in the last 5 years and aren't we doing a great job? WildEarth has introduced over 100 rhino to Chiefs Island in the last 10 years. They've done an incredible job, and those are very successful. So rhino tend to be reintroduced quite successfully. Obviously, huge areas have been recolonized by animals through reintroductions of specially captive bred animals, or animals that have been captured, say, from Kruger and put into them. Madikwe National Park is a very good example of that. That's a big national park in the northwest of the country, where there are now good, healthy populations of wild dogs and elephants and rhino and various other antelope species. So it can be done. But what often happens then is it's a relocation from an area like this to another wild area. A reintroduction of an injured animal that's been removed from the wild, or an animal that's been raised, tends to be a bit of a disaster almost universally. So that's unfortunately why we tend not to interfere as much as we can. I'm just going to hail Scott on the Game Drive radio, hoping that perhaps he's found something of great interest. Scott Dyson coming.
Jack, see that the tracks have come along, bubbles have come from west of Aida Road and down to the south. So we're just trying to work on it. What do you mean now?
Yeah, you're breaking up quite badly. I'm just approaching Cheetah Cut Line. I haven't copied what tracks those are. Still talking to him, or trying to. Scott, can you go with what tracks those are?
The tracks are over the line.
Okay, copy, thanks. You did break up on the last direction. Where were they going? Tracks of the Nkuguma Pride.
Been headed east from west of Aida Road and bubbles have come line before they went for a drink of the town. Now we're just trying to work on where they've gone.
Okay, copy that. I'll check the cut line here. Right, so they were heading east from a road just to the west there. And I did hear some mumblings of it, but I couldn't quite follow it earlier on. So let's keep an eye out for any tracks that might be crossing here. Nkuguma Pride, we'd love to see. And Scott is obviously on foot there and in that Mahindra car, the other green car there, looking to see if there isn't any further evidence of the Nkuguma Pride around where he is. This is very exciting. Scott, is there anywhere particular you'd like me to check?
No, I'm not sure which road did you take from the down? Did you hit the bulls?
I took Hippo Bulls, yeah.
Maybe Boytown Road, anywhere in this area for now would be good.
Okay, covered that. Alright, we are going to go up to the top here, turn around probably and come back towards Buffelshoek waterhole and see if we can't pick up further tracks of the Nkuguma Pride, which would be very good. I hope I haven't driven over the tracks while we've been live. I don't think I have, but it's not impossible. Scott, just to keep you posted, we did do Quarry Pan Road. There were some elephants there, but I didn't see anything on the road. That's not to say I didn't miss them.
Okay, copy that.
So we'll keep a very sharp eye out on the road now. Very important to make sure that we don't drive over the tracks, especially if there are people on foot trying to find them. Must say, I'd be fascinated to know who's left in this pride, what's going on. I know that the female that was with the Birmingham boys earlier on today or yesterday is still with them, and whether she's still doing her flirting or not, I'm not sure. Rather exciting. So we'll take the fire break here. There's a fire break that goes down towards Buffelshoek Waterhole. We'll take that and see if we can't pick anything up. Now, Vincent, this is a question that has come a few times. And Vince, you're sitting in Texas wondering about the fate of the Matimba lions and those two magnificent Salati lions that we had the other day. Now, for those of you perhaps new viewers, there's a great pride takeover going on in this area. The 5 young Birmingham boys are roughly sort of 4 years old, are coming into this area now, 4 to 5 years old, trying to take over from 2 adults or 2 10-year-olds called the Matimbas, and they've chased them well to the south. And then the other day we had a group 2 or 2 more males, about probably 7 or 8 years old, called the Salati males, and they seem to be marking territory here, probably due to a power vacuum. And Vince, you want to know, would they ever join up with the Matimbas to challenge the Birmingham boys as they come in marauding through Juma? No, Vince, I think the chances of that are negligible to 0, and the reason for that is that they are competitors. They're not related to each other. Coalitions of male lions either form when the lions are young nomads on their own, or when they're in the pride themselves, and they often leave with their brothers and cousins, and that's how the coalitions form. And that's certainly what happened with the Birmingham boys. Once they've become territorial males, it's highly, highly unlikely that they will ever start or form up or create another coalition with some territorial males that have been kicked out of an area. So I think it's highly unlikely. So just as we're getting into this discussion on the territoriality and looking for some further evidence of lions, Charlotte in Port Elizabeth, which is in South Africa, just near where my parents live actually, Charlotte. You can wave off to the east of where you are, towards Kenton, where my parents live. And Charlotte, you want to know if the Birmingham boys come from the same pride. They do seem to come from the same pride, on a farm called Birmingham in the Timbavati next to Ngala, where I used to work. Please excuse this rather rocky road, and if you hear a thump, it's VM falling out of the car. Charlotte, they do seem to have come from the same pride. Now, what that means is that, and one of them is definitely slightly older than the other 4. What that means is that they're not necessarily brothers, but they're most likely cousins, or even cousins or siblings, but maybe from different litters. So they could be no, they couldn't be from the same. They're different litters, I don't think, from the same mother, because their ages are too close. So they would either be from different mothers, so they're cousins, or they could be brothers. Certainly 2 or 3 of them could be from the same litter. Some kudu up ahead, which is never the healthiest sign when you're looking for lions. We'll drive down here now, back towards Buffelshoek. See if we can't pick something up. I'm not going to stop here for the kudu. We don't have a huge amount of time left, and I do want to just try and help, just try and find these lions, if you don't mind. Sure that we don't drive over any of the tracks. So if our signal does become a little dodgy here, and it might, please forgive us. We are, as we head towards Buffelshoek Waterhole, there does seem to be a little bit of an issue with the signal. We'll probably be okay. Jamie is currently off in the east looking for leopard tracks. She is searching fervently for young Madiba, and we're hoping quite desperately that soon we'll be able to see him again after his experience with the dog. And I'm sure it probably did disturb him slightly to have the experience of being chased out of the tree, which had to happen. But I don't think it's going to affect his, his confiding nature around us. And then just keeping along the theme of the lions and the coalitions and how they form and how they don't. Remember, there are no hard and fast rules in this game. And the more we make definite assertions about things, the more we tend to end up with omelette on our faces. And John in California, your question is, do I think Junior would have a better chance of joining the Birmingham Boys Coalition if he was not with the Pride? So if he was a nomad? John, possibly. I truly don't believe that he would join the coalition because it's so strong already. He's a bit younger than they are, and you know, they've all come from a Pride, and 5 is quite a lot anyway. So I think the chances of them accepting a totally strange male are slim to negligible again, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. Nothing is impossible out here. So would the Salatis and Matimbas join up? Again, I'd say it's even more impossible than Junior joining the Birminghams, but I'd say both are highly unlikely. Are they totally impossible? No, I don't think they're totally impossible at all. The most likely scenario for Junior is that he will go off on his own and find some other nomads who aren't yet in the throes of trying to take over a territory. If he doesn't do that, he's going to either have to become the biggest lion in the history of the Sabi Sands if he wants to take over a territory, or he's going to have to disappear and live as a nomad for a long time and try and find another nomad that is the same. And that's certainly not unheard of. Lions do form coalitions with each other, but at the moment there seem to be so many coalitions around here that I don't think he's going to join an already existing successful one. But, so there are 2 males called the, I've got to get this right now, there are 2 males called the Sparta, not the Sparta males, the Styx males, who are just a little bit older than Junior is. They're about 4 years older. They don't seem to be trying to take a territory yet. They're knocking about here. They come from the Styx Pride, sons of the Matimbas, so they are actually related to Junior. Now the chances of him forming a coalition with them, I would say, are much higher than were he to form than the chances of him forming a coalition, say, with the Birminghams. So we haven't found any further tracks around here, of course. Scott and Steph and Jean Ray are around here trying to find the tracks. I certainly didn't see any on the road there. Here is the inimitable tracking team. So let's have just a quick chat with them and we'll see where they would like us to go and follow up.
Crossing into Torchwood.
Here comes Scott now.
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
How are you?
Very good, how are you?
All right.
Good. Morning, everyone. Again.
There we go.
Olivia.
Yeah.
What's up?
So, we have done the cut line
Yeah.
to where you saw us turn around on Cheetah cut line there, and said, well, no tracks coming out there. So, we're not sure. It looks like their tracks could be heading back in the direction they came from.
Leaving
To be sure.
this
Okay.
baby
So we're
with
still
all
just going to
the
fish around here and make sure they haven't gone
Allen
this
and
way,
Rock.
and then take it from there.
far
Alright.
the wind north.
Okay, we'll do Quarry Pan Road again then,
So-
and just stay out of your way. But I wasn't watching the road carefully along Hippo Pools.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So maybe what do you want to do, Hippo Pools?
I'm just going to walk here quickly
Okay.
just to make sure the ground's so hard at the
Yeah,
moment that
it's
it's
really
really
difficult.
tricky to see tracks
Okay.
unless they're in a very soft
Yeah.
spot. So I
Okay.
just want to double check here and then.
I'll do Quarry Pan again, and then reassess from there.
Okay, very
Okay.
good. Good luck,
All
everyone.
right.
See you later.
There we go. Right, here we go. Now, here we will have a brief look at Jean-Dre. That's what he looks like. You don't often see him. Behind him, of course, is the great Professor. Good morning, Professor. Are you having a splendid morning? Good, good. And somewhere around here is Steph. Steph's a bit like a ninja. He could be within centimeters of us and we wouldn't know. So we just if we do lose signal, it's because we're going to a slightly dodgy area, but we should be okay. And I'm just going to very carefully watch the road for any signs of the Nkahuma pride, or what is left of it. All right, while we do this, which might become a little boring while the signal's a bit bad, we're going to head across to Jamie. She's back on the vehicle. She'll give you an update, and I'll chat to you a little bit later, hopefully with some good news.
Welcome back. And I went for a long walk through the drainage line to see if I could follow up on where I had who I suspect to be, or what I suspect to be, Shadow's tracks. Now, the one thing I haven't seen anywhere in this area is any sign of Madiba. I haven't seen his tracks while I've been looping around. And of course, it could be that he's been resting up in this block for quite a while, so his tracks coming in might have disappeared in the interim. I've been listening for alarm calls, I've been driving loops, and I took a long walk from Termite Mound to Termite Mound and then into the drainage line that's off to my right. What I'm relying on now is alarm calls. I'm hoping that if they are on the move, that something will alert us to their presence. It is painstaking, but it is totally worth the effort. You've got to put in the work if you want the sightings. Now, I'm sure that she's in here somewhere. Her tracks haven't come out onto this road. Don't look like they've come out on Buffelshoek. It's just a matter of working out exactly where she's been hiding. Unfortunately, a drainage line as well as a guari thicket make lots of nice hiding places for sneaky leopards. Now, Ellen sent through a very interesting update, and thank you for that, Ellen. And Ellen, I know, keeps very much on top of the leopards that are around us. She is an expert at knowing who is who and where. Now, Ellen tells me that the Nkora Rangers put up an update that they saw Madiba yesterday, but without specifying a location. And then surely they would have alerted the Sabi Sands. And that is a very good chance that they did, which might explain the lack of tracks in this area. This is where James said he had the last tracks, was around Gowrie Gate. But if the Nkoro Rangers did see him, then that might explain things. I haven't heard any updates on the radio, and I didn't yesterday, but I will be in contact with him. So thank you, genuinely thank you for that, Ellen. It's good to have an update, then at least I know what kind of situation I'm dealing with. Maybe we can get hold of them and see if the guys have managed to dart him and give him the vaccine he needs. Obviously in these situations, time is a little bit of the essence. We want to get it to him as soon as possible. Since we haven't heard anything or requests for help, maybe it could be that he has got it, which is wonderful news for him. I must say that the news from the Nkoro Rangers has taken some of the tension away from me. But Sharon, you were wondering what would happen if we didn't find Madiba, and chances are absolutely nothing. The most likely scenario is that it's absolutely fine, and that the dog wasn't rabid, and he should be healthy and happy and in his element somewhere in the bush. But Sharon, don't stress. I think it sounds like he has been found. Either way, it was just entirely precautionary approach. A better safe than sorry situation. And although it is true that it's better to administer that vaccine as soon as possible, and then give him his booster shot 3 weeks after that, it takes some time. Even if the dog was rabid, it does take time for the virus to manifest itself and start showing symptoms. At that point it's too late, but you've got a week or two that maybe you can play with. I'm not too worried. I think he's absolutely fine. I just want to see for myself, just to see how he's feeling after all of this drama that he accidentally caused. Shame, completely innocently. He obviously didn't mean to, but it happened. I'll try and get you a view of this impala. If I get any closer, he's going to stop what he's doing. And he was being highly entertaining. I think he's going to walk away. He was scratching his head on the tree. But he's finished now. He's obviously got whatever was causing the itch and disappeared off. Now let's continue our search. Where to go next? It's all quiet. There's no alarm calls. I've walked the drainage line, I've walked the block. I can still hear go-away birds calling at the dam. Oh, awesome. Here she go. No, hold on, let's see. Where's my binoculars? They are. Very well spotted, Brian. And that distinctive flash of white tells us immediately that it's a fish eagle. We're not too far from Sydney's dam, and that's probably where he came from. But of course, being birds of prey, he could well be scouting for things other than fish. So although they do predominantly prey on things like catfish. Oh, awesome. That is such an archetype or typical African sound. I really, really love that call. I also find it completely impossible to imitate. I have tried. Now he's soaring on a hot air current, so a thermal current, just to reduce any energy that he has to expend staying in the air. but he could well be looking for prey other than fish. Something like rodents or snakes are also within their realm of possibilities, and they are big birds, they are big eagles, so they are capable of taking down fairly large prey. Even something like a scrub hare could potentially be a meal for a fish eagle if they got the angle right. I think he might be making his way back to the dam. It could be either one of the two that nests close to the Djuma Dam, or it could be one somewhere from Sydney's dam. Really, really cool to see. They are territorial, so the mated pairs will defend the area that they are in. And their territory size will depend on the type of territory. So in terms of riverfront, which is perfect for them, that's where they will have the smallest territories because that's the most contested territorial area. Our kudus have found us again. Just going to approach nice and slowly so that we don't spook them in any way. Get that little bit of momentum. It's awesome to see these two males together, both of whom are in their primes. And Gilly was updating me on some information that James has told viewers, that you can age the kudu by their horns, and that you look at the tips, and if they're upward and outward facing, then they are in their prime. If they are inward facing, then they are still a little bit younger. And that's certainly the case. You also look at the number of twirls that they have. So these two, Zeus and then the one with the slightly closer together horns, those will be easily over 5 years old. You can also start to look at the white tips that very mature kudu bulls start to get on the top of their horns. I'm going to shuffle forward a little bit because they are in thick bush. Now, it's difficult with kudu. You can't be completely bound by a set of rules in terms of aging them. So with Zeus's horns, as spread out as they are and the tips pointing right out, it doesn't necessarily mean he's past his prime in terms of age. I think he is right there. I drove past him when I was tracking earlier, and he is absolutely enormous, but he does seem to be really fit and healthy. So I'd say that it's not necessarily the case that if you have them right outward facing and pointing with the ivory tips, that they are past their prime. It's when you start to see them losing condition. Hello, beautiful. This one is slightly younger. Put it at maybe 4 or 5 years old. But definitely starting to develop a beautiful set of horns. Look how green it is. Nibbling on what I think from this angle looks like a brackthorn or a splendid thorn. It gets that very, very green color, and I swear I can see a difference in the color of the bush from yesterday to today. It's almost like the green has popped up overnight. I hate to distract us from the kudu. and I hope they don't stop doing it. But there were two impala, I could hear them clashing off to my left. They're play fighting, they're full of high spirits. Let's just see if they carry on doing it. Here we go. All of the animals are in high spirits today. The kudu have been play fighting, the impala. I think they're happy that spring has sprung and that there's green and new shoots for them to eat. It must make such a nice change. Just imagine when you've got used to eating that dry brown stuff and struggling to get the nutrients, and all of a sudden there's this fresh, green, soft food for you to eat. It must be such a pleasure. I'm not sure necessarily if that's humanizing it a little bit too much, but I think it must be nice for them. A relief to know that the dry season is coming to a close. Here we go. Let me shift forward again. Now what does happen, although they have a very strict breeding season, impala, so they will have their time when all of the females go into estrus. That's around May, end of May, beginning of June. So you can see if I can get a nice view. I'm hoping they're going to come towards us. They actually seem to be moving in this direction. Nope, it's not a good view. Let's try and get a little bit of a better view. I just wanted to discuss a little bit about the way that they work, and we are seeing a little bit of action, I've noticed, with the impala males. They're still causing trouble, making their grunting, rutting sounds. Let's see if we can get a bit closer. So they breed in May, that's their main breeding time. End of May, beginning of June is when the impala ewes come into estrus. And then after that, a month or two later, those ewes that didn't get pregnant will enter a second estrus cycle. So there'll be a short later rut for a week or two. And then what we're going to start seeing fairly soon is as the females, the pregnant females, as their hormones levels start to rise before they get to the point of giving birth, then you get what's known as a false rut. So the males get a little bit confused by all of the hormone scents flying around, and they start sort of battling with each other. Their testosterone levels go up a little bit. And that's just a false rut just before the Nyala ewes give birth. And that will be towards the end of November, although I've seen some rather large looking ladies already. There's none here, this is just a bachelor herd. Thomas has made an interesting comparison while we look at these delicate, beautifully designed antelope, that the pronghorn in America is thought to be related to African species of antelope, and specifically or close to the impala. And that's a very interesting point, and it's got two matters. From what I know about pronghorns, I think they have the greatest endurance of any of the antelope runners, or the deer and antelope runners. So they can maintain very, very high speeds for a very long time. And that, to me, in terms of relation to other antelope in Africa would put me in mind of something like a tsessebe or a hartebeest rather than an impala. Those are the antelope we associate with great endurance and speed. But it could well be that the pronghorns are more closely related to impala. Now impala are in their own separate tribe. The antelopes are not divided into families, but they are divided into tribes. And the impala have their own. And the name of it has just gone out of my head. Desperately trying to think. It starts with an A. Somewhere in there. I honestly cannot remember. But that could well be, Thomas. I'd have to look into it more closely. But I do know of the pronghorn. And I believe it is famed for its endurance. Go away, bird is calling again. They don't sound terribly frantic. I'm just sitting listening, trying to work out if, and hoping that maybe it might be that leopard, that female leopard coming back out. I really suspect that it is Shadow, but again, it's an assumption. But I'm going to loop back down that way and just see if that great go-away bird has spotted something that we haven't. Hopefully something with spots. Sorry, Brian, you okay? Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about young Madiba and the prospect of him being darted for that anti-rabies vaccine. I'm going to have to do this descent fairly carefully. Just to avoid hitting the tow hitch on our way down. Now, Jennifer, you were wondering how they were planning to look after Madiba and protect him from other predators if he was groggy from a dart. Now, in this particular case, the dart that he is getting isn't going to have any anesthetic in it at all. So they're not looking to put him under sedation. In any way. All it is a vaccine, a dart that goes in and immediately plunges the vaccine as soon on impact, plunges the anti-rabies vaccine into the underneath the skin and then drops out. So it doesn't have any ill effects. He will get a fright, he will jump a bit, but it is for his own good. Here the go-away birds. They don't look terribly distressed though. That's what I've been hearing. But they've stopped calling, they've stopped alarm calling. Sharon was worried about what would happen if we don't find Madiba in time. But Georgianne in Illinois has shared that in the US you have 7 days to get the vaccine after exposure to rabies. And I'm sure it works in a very similar way here, that we have about a week to play with. But we will know by tomorrow, I would say, whether or not that dog has tested positive for rabies, and we will, of course, let you know as soon as we do. I'd love to also get hold of those in coral ranges and just find out exactly where it was that they saw this little leopard. The go-away birds are not sharing their secrets. gone quiet once again. Sure, and the temperature difference out here is astronomical. It's gone from, what was it, 12 degrees this morning. It's probably around 25, 26, possibly even higher in the sun. Amazing how fast it starts to get warm at this time of year. And I really genuinely think that this is my favorite time of year to be in the bush. It's hard to pick a favorite, but I think for me this is the best time. It's green, but there's still not too much plant cover, so you can see deep into the bush. There's the prospect of babies, the birds are all coming back. It really is an awesome time to be out and about in this area. Now I hear that James has been tracking lions around Buffelshoek Dam, which is very, very interesting. And I'm sure you're wondering how he's getting on. So for now, let's head across to James and I will catch up with you a little bit later.
3, 2, 1. Hello everybody, welcome to Wendy. Sorry about my saying 3, 2, 1. That's not a normal thing for somebody to say, of course, and it relates entirely to the fact that VM cannot hear the of Nikki Austin coming live, so I have to count him in as Nikki counts me in. It's all rather complicated and utterly irrelevant to your lives, so I'm sorry for telling you about it. Anyway, there it is. Now, what we're looking at is a white-backed vulture circling above a batalier. Now, were they to start diving for the floor, I would immediately assume that the Nkahuma Pride had murdered some hapless herbivore in the vicinity, but I think what they're doing, especially as the day just starts to heat up, around this sort of 8:30ish time, they will start to fly on the thermals, because the thermals will start to rise up, and that's what that vulture's doing. Isn't it beautiful the way it flies? A gentle, peaceful floating. And I tell you what, if you ever are in need of some peace, to lie in the midday in a place like Africa here where we are and watch those vultures flying high, 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 sometimes so high that just a tiny little spot, to watch that happen is the most, I find it tremendous soul food for myself. They're also, I don't know if you can hear it. You hear that?
Yeah.
That's an eagle calling. It could well be those bataliers actually calling at each other. I don't know if you heard that. Beautiful batalier. Now they will of course be calling at each other if that is them. I think it is. I'm going to just quickly play the song of the batalier on my bird application. Wonderful technology these days. And while I do that, while I look for it, Assad, you want to know how do we keep a track of the birds that are endangered and what do we do about it? Assad, there are various groups in South Africa that look after birds. BirdLife South Africa keeps track of them. There are lots of amateur ornithologists who make detailed notes on all the birds they see. The Bird Atlas Project, the Percy Fitzpatrick Institute at the University of Cape Town, and there are a number of other organizations that look after bird numbers and monitor them and do... Oh no, my phone is on silent. Oh, Okay, so it wasn't the Battalier calling. I actually initially thought it probably wasn't. I think it's two Wahlberg's eagles calling at each other, and I'll just quickly play that call once you've heard the Battalier. So the Battalier goes, "Wah!" Play it into the microphone for you. Although, there's another call that it makes. And it wasn't either of those two calls, so we'll quickly go. Let's just quickly go back to, just go to the Wahlbergs, because I think that it was a Wahlberg's eagle that we were hearing. I might be wrong. Here he is. That doesn't sound right either. So maybe it was those Battaliers. That latter one that we heard could well have been the Battaliers. I've got Nikki in my ear saying she thinks it was the Battaliers, and I think she's probably right. Yeah. What do you think, Liam? Definitely wasn't this.
No, that sounds like Franklin.
Yes, it's not a Franklin though, Liam. It's a Wahlberg's eagle. Never mind. I'll just ignore Liam, please. Okay, so we're going to go with Battalier on that call. Okay, shut up now, Wahlberg. Now back, it would have been impossible to do that without a tape player and a lot of winding of tape and stretching, possibly quite a lot of swearing before you got anything like the sound that we just got quickly off the back end of a very average telephone. So technology really does help us in the wildlife sphere in so many ways. And I know people used to ask me as we were people used to ask me when I was guiding, why don't you just put a radio tracker in these animals and then we would just drive to them? You don't need to worry about trying to track them or anything like that. You just put a subcutaneous chip in them, have a GPS screen on your car and drive to whatever you wanted to see. Technologically we could do that, I suppose, but it would make for rather I don't know, less than exciting, I think, and less authentic experience here in the wilds. And although the tracking can be tremendously frustrating at times, yes, absolutely, it's so exciting to not know what's coming around the corner, and the skill of tracking, of course, is a wonderful thing. Lovely question about the bird calling. We were listening to the Battaliers calling just now, and Diana, you would like to know, do we have a dawn chorus here that is very loud? Diana, absolutely we do. You say half an hour after dawn or during the dawn. It's probably a bit longer than that, you know. It's probably up to an hour of birds as soon as it gets light. Starts off with the sparrows, and then come the franklins, and then the robins and the crested barbets and a whole lot of other wonderful birds that sing away until the heat starts to build after about 7 o'clock. So yes, we do get a hugely loud and beautiful dawn chorus, especially after it's been rainy and miserable, and when the weather comes back and it's delightful like it was this morning, there's often a very loud and gorgeous chorus that we get. And that will increase as we go towards the wet season, or the middle of the wet season. Such a wonderful time of year, this. Such an air of expectancy that fills the atmosphere. There is a nyala. Let us have a look at it. This is a nyala ewe or cow. They are the mass at which a cow becomes a ewe. It's one of these strange anomalies of English. So anything below that mass out here is known as a ewe, and anything above it is a cow. And anything nyala sized and below becomes, well, you have a nyala bull, and anything smaller than a nyala bull is a ram. An interesting one from Asad, who's clearly had some experience with deer. Now, Asad, you would like to know if any of our antelope lose their horns. It's one of the characteristics of antelope that they do not lose their horns. They are permanent fixtures on an antelope's head, and if they do break off during a fight, or there's an abscess or something and they break off, they don't grow back. So it's a bit like an appendage, they don't grow back. So unlike a deer, which will grow antlers and lose them on a regular basis, that's not the same at all for the bull and ram antelope out here. Thanks for that, Asad. It's a good question, and one that we should probably mention a lot more than we do, because of course many of our viewers come from the Northern Hemisphere, where you do have deer species throughout, from all the way through North America into India, across the reaches of Northern Europe. There are deer species. We don't get any deer in Africa, though, but for those that have been introduced here. So there are populations of fallow deer that occur around the place, definitely not in a place like the Kruger Park. They would be removed forthwith should they ever arrive here. Certainly where my father lives, my parents live near Port Elizabeth, where we had a question today. There's a golf course nearby at a little place called Port Alfred, and on that golf course they have a huge plethora of wonderful wildlife, but they do also have fallow deer, and they're quite common in the Eastern Cape on some of the small sort of privately owned game reserves. But they're introduced from Europe. The heat is now starting to build, and I think it's going to be a pretty hot day. Sorry about that. Now, as we close off, there's some beautiful elephants, well, I think they were beautiful buffalo. Viam is just rolling his eyes heavenward as I use the term beautiful, prefix or prefix the word buffalo with beautiful.
I never dispute their beauty. It's their level of activity.
Okay, the level of activity, that's the problem. Thank you for clearing that up, Viam. Laura, you want to know if I've been to the pump house to check out the sausage tree. Now, for those of you who don't know, I was asked if we got sausage trees the other day by a viewer in this area. I categorically said we do not get sausage trees in this area. We had various people from Finland, Raisa I think it was, and Jeffrey from Texas, who then came up and said, well, no, you do get them there, and they pointed out two specific spots where they know that sausage trees exist. They have not been here, and yet they knew where the sausage trees were. Laura, I then did go to the pump house. I actually can't find the sausage tree. I found one that could be a sausage tree, but it doesn't have any leaves on it yet. So I'm waiting for them to come. I'm very sure that it is the sausage tree, so I have seen it, but it doesn't have its beautiful red flowers yet, or any of its nice long red leaves, and certainly none of its slightly none of its fruit pods that have given it some of its traditional uses. And so on that note, I'm going to bid you a fond farewell with a word of thanks to Viam, who has now taken off his winter woolies and is now dressed very bush chic in his bush shirt and bush pants, and boots. I suppose they're more sort of mining boots than they are bush boots, and a hat, like I say, older than Methuselah. And a big thank you to Nikki and Jessica in the final control, who have been operating the dials and twiddling the knobs. Thank you to Eugene in his tin hut somewhere below the Gari repeater. And a big thank you to young Jamie, and who's filming her? Brian is filming her, the enormous Brian Joubert. On that note, we will see you this afternoon, probably in a very hot state, and hopefully with some luck with the lions. Bye bye, keep safe and keep happy wherever you are. See you later.
So, welcome back, and an exciting morning it has been with those incredible kudu, but I'm still desperate to find out exactly what's happening with young Madiba, so I will be following up on him this afternoon just to see if we can get an update on how he's doing. And I know that all of you as the viewers are also keen to see and hear from him, or hear about him, and if he's feeling healthy and if he's recovered from his ordeal with the dog. Now, I'd just like to say a big thank you as well from Scotty, and I think it was Jandre on camera with him this morning. So Scott and Jandre and Steph, who were out on bushwalk. It's great that we've been able to get these bushwalks up and running. It's very, very exciting. And a big thank you to Brian for all of his hard work. Now, Nikki and Jess in FC, a thank you to you, and Eugene for all of his incredibly hard work. And last but not least, a huge thank you to you, the viewers. We will catch up with you on the sunset safari. Have a wonderful day wherever you are, and see you a little bit later.